You're listening to the Westminster-Canterbury Tales podcast, creating community to foster joy and well-being. Thanks for listening.
Hello, and welcome to Leadership Podcast Series. I am Elizabeth Hines, and I will be your host for this leadership series. I would like to welcome Ed Lawson, Senior IT Director, to our listening audience. In this series, we will be discussing workplace innovation by making significant changes or improvements in the way work is done at Westminster-Canterbury. Thank you for joining us today, Ed. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Ed, can you give us a brief recap of your background and career journey that led you to your current role at Westminster?
So I took a little bit of a non-traditional journey to get to IT. So if you go back over kind of my early career, I counted it up one day and surprised my kids because I've had 25 jobs in my lifetime. And those have ranged anywhere from being a janitor to working construction to working in retail, working in restaurants. I was a bouncer for a while. So I've done a little bit of everything. And we'll talk more a little bit later on about kind of how that relates to innovation, but it gives me a unique perspective on the people who are trying to consume and use technology kind of thing. Anyway, that's, kind of like I said, a non-traditional approach, but I got into IT in the early 1990s, so dating myself a little bit there, but I started out being the person who was responsible for bringing technology tools into a small telecommunications company. So we were doing telecommunications contracts for government installations. And then a couple of different times I followed a boss to a new organization. So each time that gave me an opportunity to kind of increase my scope of responsibility and kind of the technology that I was involved with, and also allowed me to see how larger organizations worked. So one of the companies I worked for was headquartered in Germany, and I got to spend time in Germany and Mexico and Brazil and working with colleagues from all over the world, which really kind of gave me some different perspectives on how people solve problems differently. And then my most recent role before Westminster-Canterbury was in a manufacturing organization. We had 100 locations across 13 states. So it was a good-sized organization. But I'm really kind of excited and enjoying my time here at Westminster-Canterbury. It's really neat for me to be part of a nonprofit organization. That's new to me. And learning new things.
Wow, you have achieved a lot on your journey that brought you here, and you come well qualified.
Well, I like to think so.
Let us know, what is one thing on your bucket list that you are eager to check off?
I would love to go see the Northern Lights. I've never seen them. I would love to go to Northern. I've had the opportunity to travel to Europe a couple of times, but never been far enough north or at the right time of year to see the Northern Lights. I'm just fascinated by that as a natural phenomena, and I know some folks who've seen that, and so that's something that's on my bucket list. I don't know that I'll get around to that until after my kids are out of college, but you never know.
And that's a good aim. Okay, we're gonna go into leadership development. What inspired you to take on leadership roles?
I was thinking about that, getting ready for this conversation, and realized that pretty much every job I've had, like I said, I've had a bunch. And when I was younger, they were just normal jobs. But once I started to get into a more professional environment, I realized that I was really drawn to problem solving. So if there was a need, if there was a problem, if something wasn't working right, something wasn't efficient, I really found that I liked being part of the solution. Being in that position has helped me solve some problems along the way, which tends to lead to, well, you solve that problem. Can you solve this problem? And the next thing you know, you got too many problems to solve, and you need some people to help solve them. So it kind of evolved into leadership. So that's part of it. And then the other thing that led me to kind of choose to be in a leadership role is that I enjoy people. I like being in a position to kind of help people, mentor people, and help them kind of grow and develop the skills they're going to help them pursue the things that they're interested in. So I really kind of enjoy the people development side of it as well.
Leadership says a whole lot when you know you are in that position and you can bring something from that position. Mm-hmm. John Maxwell has a book titled The Difference Maker, and he subtitled it, Making Your Attitude Your Greatest Assets. In this book, he writes that attitude is a primary component in determining success, in which I agree. And he also explained that attitude is the difference in how we approach and deal with relationships and challenges. Also, he said that one who brings about changes and improving things. and this is how I see you, Ed. You bring changes. In IT, as a director, you're coming up with different concepts. What can you say to acknowledge you being a different maker?
So I'll say a couple. I think I've got some examples I can talk about, but one thing I want to comment on about it is, for me in particular, in IT in general, sometimes we lead the way with finding new solutions and innovations that can help the business, and a lot of times we're in sort of a supporting role where the business leaders know what their challenges are, know the things that they're struggling with, and IT kind of comes alongside and says, well, here's the way technology can help you solve that problem. You know what the problem is. We can help figure out what the technology solution is. So all of these things are really a partnership. And as we talk more about innovation later, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the importance of there being a partnership between the folks who really know the business really well and the people who know the technology really well, and then being able to marry those two together. So that's kind of how I approach being a difference maker, is being the person that can bring those two together. But some of the stuff that we're doing here at Westminster-Canterbury, I think the first thing, I've been here a little over a year now, and the first thing that I really focused on was trying to improve communication and collaboration between IT and the business teams. Spending a lot of time, investing a lot of time with the business leaders, campus owners, and other leaders in the business to make sure that I understand not just the business that I'm kind of new to, but the challenges that they're having with existing technology or challenges in areas that don't have technology. So really bringing a lot more communication and collaboration between IT and the business teams. One example of that is we've recently started the business technology roadmap process, where we sit down with the leaders of each of the different business units. And to start out with, it's a very simple list. Tell us what technology that you use to deliver the services that you do to our residents each day. And going down to making sure that we've got an executive sponsor for each piece of technology that's in use, and that each area has a functional owner, somebody who really knows that technology well. And it's interesting just going through that process of just, let's look at the technology that you have today, sparks all kinds of conversations about where the gaps and we're using the ways that we're using technology, but the ways that we're not using technology. So just going through and writing this stuff down is helping us start to think differently about where and how we're using technology. So I'm pleased we've been able to do that. So the other thing is working on communication with the residents, and making sure that we really improved IT communication with the residents. So we're doing that we've offered some tech talks on how to provide or how to use specific technologies and to give some guidance to the residents. We've put more information on the resident hub. I've had the opportunity and pleasure to join several floor rep meetings to just kind of increase the direct communication with the residents. So been pleased with that. And one example of how I think that has really kind of worked to benefit the organization. So recently we had a thing called a Wi-Fi certificate. It's just a security thing, and it enables your phone or your tablet to use the Wi-Fi here. And we have to change it once a year. It's a security measure. And in order to continue to use it, you have to push a little button that says, yes, it's okay to use this. And last year we had all kinds of trouble with that. It took weeks to get everybody reconnected. So this year we took a different approach communication-wise, put together some really detailed instructions with nice pictures about how it works. Got that out in front of the residents early on before the change actually took place, really kind of over communicated. And then we got a little creative and said, well, instead of us going to the residents, let's have them come to us. So we took the penthouse lounge for 4 hours on the afternoon of the change, and we had cookies and brownies, and we said, bring us your device, and if it's not working, we'll help you with it. And that was it was a really effective way to get it done. We got it all done in 2 days as opposed to the weeks that it took us to get it done last year. So I was pleased with that. Other things that are kind of difference maker stuff, there's a lot of moving parts right now with the Bay Tower and the hospice house. So you wouldn't think with the Bay Tower that we'd be talking about technology because it's a few years away from being built. But one thing that's really important to us is to make sure that we're going to have a consistent resident experience. So whether you're in the East Tower, the West Tower, the Bay Tower, wherever you might be. So spending a lot of time these days looking at how can we improve and kind of take our technology platforms to the next level to make sure that we're really offering a preeminent technology experience. And the Bay Tower construction and the hospice house construction are really giving us an opportunity to do that. So been spending a lot of time on that. One example of that would be trying to increase our technology use but save money would be using facial recognition to identify residents who may be a wander risk if they've got cognitive issues, as opposed to like a wearable device or something that might not be acceptable to a resident. So that's kind of a creative approach we're trying to take. Another thing that I've been able to work on since I've been here, and this is really a true partnership with the business. The business identified a need to take all of the data that's generated by the different systems that we have and make sure that they've got good visibility. What information do we have, and how do we make good decisions based on the information that's in all these different software systems that we have? So Tim and some of the business leaders identified the need for a data and analytics program, and kind of got that off the ground. And I've been able to join into that effort and help kind of guide some of the thinking about how do we. It's really boring, geeky, technical stuff, but it's really important and it produces really great results. But you have to be pretty disciplined about how you go about managing all this data and turning it into useful reporting. So data and analytics it's super exciting. In terms of the value it can deliver to the business. It's super boring to listen to me talk about it, but I'm very glad that to be able to work on that.
Wow, very impressive. And you're truly a difference maker. You have achieved a lot in your year, and you have brought a lot of things to the table as well. So thank you for sharing that. As a senior IT director, you can play a critical role in facilitating workplace innovation through technology-driven solutions. What are some examples that you can share with us and the listening audience?
One of the ones that you had on the list was flexible work arrangements, and that is something that we're exploring. You know, a lot of the work that the team here at Westminster-Canterbury does has to be on site because that's where our residents are. But there are certain roles that might lend themselves to flexible work and offsite. And one of the things that's important to do to really make that happen and make that realistic is to be able to have tools that allows the team member who might be remote to have their priorities aligned and to be clear on what those priorities are, and that their time is being spent on the things that are prioritized if they're not here in the office every day. So we've actually got a couple of different pieces of technology that we've piloted to try and give managers the tools to be able to make sure that people who might be working remote are spending their time on the right things and the right amount of time on the right things. So that's one thing we've done a little bit. Collaboration tools, super important, especially when it comes to the topic of innovation. Being able to share information basically real time, well, and not basically real time, actually in the moment, being able to actually collaborate on a document together is really important. So we've been using Monday.com. That's really more of a project management kind of tool, but it's really important to keep us aligned about who's doing what as we're going through these different kind of innovation steps or just regular technology steps. Google, the Google platform has actually been really flexible. We can share a document, we can all be editing at the same time. I see that happening all the time within the team at Westminster-Canterbury. So that's really been important. And that kind of collaboration on a document in real time is really, our topic is innovation. And that kind of collaboration is really critical. It happens all the time where 2 people, 3 people, 4 people might sit down and have a conversation about here's a business problem and do some brainstorming, and here's a really cool and interesting way that we think we can solve this problem. And everybody gets up and walks away from the table and they're like, yeah, great, we've got a plan, we got a vision, we got a plan. And as many people as you had in the room, you get that many ideas walking out the door about what they think is actually going to happen. So it never happens that when we collaborate that we all leave the table with the same vision and idea and plan about what's next. We all have our own spin on it. We all have our own interpretation. And so collaboration tools, whether it's Google or any other tool that allow us to actually document the problem that we're trying to solve and the solution that we're trying to build towards, and so that we can all see it on paper in front of us, is super, super important. Another one that you had on the list, Elizabeth, is digital transformation, which is, how do we take manual processes? There's a lot of different explanations or definitions of digital transformation, but I think about it in terms of how do we eliminate the manual capture of data. It's just kind of this geeky little buzzword, but it's actually really, really exciting in terms of what it can do for an organization, because that kind of manual ways of capturing data, typing data into a form, huge inefficiencies in terms of time and the opportunities for errors and things like that. So really looking at ways that we can capture information at the point where the service is occurring. So if you're serving food to a resident and they've got feedback, that you've got a tool available to you to capture that better than you capturing it, have the resident enter the information so that there's no communication gap, there's no error. So digital transformation, it's another one of those things. It's a little bit geeky, but it's really exciting in terms of the value that it can bring to an organization in terms of driving down errors and giving us access to information that we just maybe wouldn't have otherwise because we didn't collect it. Creating a culture of learning and development and kind of increasing the knowledge of the workforce. That's the other thing is you really start to look at innovation and digital transformation in particular is there's a really exciting opportunity for people in the workforce, for our team members to start to shift their jobs. So maybe it's no longer data entry. Maybe now it's data analysis, that I'm looking at the data that's being captured automatically. And instead of having a data entry skill, now I'm going to shift and learn sort of a data analysis skill. So I can be looking for outliers in the data. Here's things that are happening normally, and then here's an outlier. Here's something abnormal that the data is telling me. And I've got the knowledge of the business to go and dive into that and figure out, well, what's driving this outlier? What's causing this strange information that we're seeing in the data? So learning and development is really critical as part of the innovation process to make sure that your workforce really has the right kinds of skill sets to be able to not just use new technology, but to be able to act on the information and the opportunities that new technology presents to us. So I think continuous learning and development for the workforce is a really important part of the innovation journey.
And it's a never-ending process. It's always moving forward, and it's always something that has been redeveloped.
Absolutely.
And it brings me down to my next question. This book, Reinvent, is navigating business transformation in a hybrid digital era. And he defines artificial intelligence, AI, the ability of a digital computer or a computer control robot to perform tasks associated with intelligent being. And AI is something that corporate business are using now. What is your opinion on the navigating business transformation?
So I think AI has so much potential, and we're. It's easy to say that we're kind of in the infancy of AI, that it's really just starting out, but at the same time, AI, I think, is going to evolve so rapidly that we're probably already in the toddler stage of AI. It's moving quickly in terms of the ability, not just the capabilities of the AI technology itself, but Elizabeth, what you were telling me about the book, I haven't read it yet, but it talks about how organizations are leveraging the AI tools. And I think that's accelerating probably more quickly than a lot of people maybe expected. So there's a lot of change in that area right now. I think AI can be a fantastic tool. There's guide rails that need to be in place, just like with any other tool. We want to be sure with the kinds of AI tools that are out there now, we wouldn't want to put somebody's personal health information or personally identified, sensitive information of any kind, we wouldn't want to put into an AI tool. And fortunately, Westminster-Canterbury's got policies around that and training around that so that everyone is kind of staying within those guardrails. But, I think there's tremendous potential, not just for the creative kind of aspects of writing ad copy or those kinds of things, but even helping us think through business cases. And like I said a minute ago, about documenting the problem that we're trying to solve and trying to come up with some innovative ideas about how to solve the problem. I think there's a role for AI to play in that innovation process right there to help us document, to help us think about how have other people solved this problem. One of the challenges of innovation is how do you avoid reinventing a wheel that didn't work? Somebody has probably tried to solve this problem before, tried and some things that didn't work, and how do we avoid repeating those mistakes and instead leverage the successes that other people have had? And I think AI could be a tool to help with that creative process around innovation and help us avoid some dead ends and some false starts.
And moving forward in leadership topic review, we're into best practices and guiding principles. Hey, Ed, can you elaborate some ways in accomplishing workplace innovation?
Staying up to date, you've got a nice little guideline here, Elizabeth, about, staying up to date is really important. Again, that helps with what I just talked about not going down dead ends that people have already identified. I think it's important for all of us as leaders or people who want to be leaders to spend some time reading about what other people in our industry are doing. But I think what's really important is reading about what people in other industries are doing. It's really easy for us to talk to peers in our senior living industry and kind of guide our solution thinking based on that. But there's a lot of opportunity, I think, looking at other industries and different business types are solving problems to think about, well, how, because if you think about it, not so much as senior living, but you think about what are the services that we actually deliver, we're creating products like dining services and healthcare services and entertainment, resident engagement and those kinds of things. So we're creating products. There's a gazillion companies out there that create products. We're marketing those products to our residents. We're actually delivering the service. We're going out there and saying, here's your food. We're collecting fees for that. All these things are things that other people are doing in other industries. So why wouldn't we go and look outside of our industry and see how other people are providing these same services? So keeping abreast, I think it's really important to look outside of our industry and see what other people are doing in other places. That kind of leads me to number 2, the idea of collaborating across departments. Super, super important. It's been really beneficial for me. Like I said, I've only been here about a year and I'm new to this industry. So, but even if you've been here for a while, spending time talking with people in other departments, because none of our challenges happen in a vacuum. The business challenges that I'm facing, the technology challenges that I'm facing, all of that has somebody feeding into my part of the process and feeding out. So if you take paying bills, for instance, so, we bought food for the restaurant and we need to pay the bill. So the procurement process feeds into that. There's somebody who's buying the food. There's somebody who knows how much of the food that we use versus how much of it maybe went to waste or whatever. Then there's the people who actually get the invoice. And then there's the people who actually pay the bill, and then there's people who settle the bank account. So you got all these different little groups. One simple thing like paying the bill touches probably 5-6 different teams, maybe more. And so super important for us to be talking to each other about how does your day, part of your task that's involved here, kind of interact with my part of the task, and how does your need line up with what I'm trying to do? Because we don't want to create a solution that works for me but doesn't work for the 2 people that are on either side of me in this process, if that makes sense. So that kind of collaboration is really important. And then the other thing, the other great benefit of collaboration is just getting different perspectives on things. The folks in maintenance are going to think about solving problems differently than I would think about it, and the folks in marketing are going to think about it differently than I would think about it. So being able to tap into your colleagues from other departments just to kind of get the creative juices flowing in different ways. For me, it's really fun. That's the curiosity part about it for me, is being able to kind of learn how do different people think differently than I do, because not everybody thinks like Ed, and believe me, that's a good thing. Training and support, I think we talked about that a little bit earlier as well. Just how important it is for people to continue to evolve their skills, particularly as we change how our jobs work with innovation. But a couple of things that I wanted to add that aren't on the list that we put together, and one of them is the idea when we talk about innovation, really being clear as a team or as an organization about what are we aspiring to. So we have a mission, and as Westminster-Canterbury, and that's what we aspire to. How do we create community to foster joy and well-being for our residents? That's our reason for being. But when it comes to innovation, what are we aspiring to? Is innovation kind of like, it's, if we think of a better way to do something, that's great. Or is innovation something that we're really pursuing? And we're saying, hey, this is an important part of how we do our job, and this is an important part of how we deliver services to our residents, and putting some time and some resources and actually investing in the process of innovation. So I think this idea about what are we aspiring to, I think that's a really important kind of aspect of thinking about how do we pursue innovation as an organization. Another one is this idea of choosing. So it's easy to launch 1,000 ships and to innovate in 1,000 different ways, or this kind of collaboration and cross-functional stuff that we're talking about is going to generate a lot of great ideas. You get people thinking about problems differently, you're going to get a bunch of different ideas. And at some point in the process, in the innovation sort of life cycle, we're going to realize that we can't do them all. And we have to make some choices about which ones really seem like they're going to work out and which ones seem like maybe they're not going to be fruitful, As an organization and as leaders, thinking through how do we focus ourselves and focus our resources on innovation that's going to make the most impact for the organization and bring the most value to the organization. Discovery is an important part of that process. Discovering what the problems are that we're trying to solve. That's part of that. You've got an aspiration that we want to innovate. You got to go figure out how can you innovate? What are the problems? And so putting effort into actually identifying areas where innovation might really make a difference. As you start, there's another aspect to innovation that I think is important is change. This idea of developing an organization that has a level of comfort with evolution, that my job changing is a good thing for me because it builds me a new skill set and it affords me new opportunities. And, not everybody's going to see it that way, but I think helping our workforce think about innovation and change as a good thing. It kind of goes back to your book about AI. That's so different from how our lives were just a year ago. We weren't having this conversation a year ago. And all of a sudden we're having this conversation that companies have just latched onto this and it's changing, it's fundamentally changing their businesses. That's not going away. How do we equip our teams and our workforce and our colleagues to start to be comfortable with the idea that my job might change, and that's okay. That just means it's different. So I think those are a couple of ideas. And then the last thing, I touched on this earlier when we were talking about kind of learning about what's going on out in the world, but actually, and looking to other industries, but actually going out and meeting with those people and spending time with people who do similar work, but in a different place, and actually spending time with people outside our organization. Or, and this is, another kind of approach to innovation, is finding people who do something really well and thinking about, well, how could you help us do that better in our organization? Maybe having somebody who's really good at it help us do it better instead of us trying to reinvent a wheel that they've already, their wheel's shiny and it goes fast. Why should we reinvent our own wheel?
That was well said, Ed. I appreciate your interpretation and the response, and I see a lot of passion in your duties that you perform at Westminster. You reflect it, you demonstrate it, and you are excited in being in this place that you're in.
I'm excited to be hanging out here having this conversation with you, Elizabeth. That's what makes it so fun.
What do you do to relax?
It's not hard. Well, I shouldn't say it's not hard for me to relax. Actually, if you ask my wife, she would tell you that it is hard for me to relax sometimes. But I love being here at the beach. So I spent a bunch of time in California, but not at the beach. I've lived in Virginia before this go around, but not at the beach. I love the vibe here. I love the people here. And so I like going outdoors, being able to go out and walk on the beach and take the dog for a walk on the beach. I spend so much time in front of a computer or reading or those kinds of things that, being outside really kind of helps ground me. So being able to spend time with my wife and my daughters whenever I can. We got to go to a Virginia Tech football game with my daughter a couple of weeks back, doing stuff with my family. I love to volunteer at church. I love to volunteer in other organizations. So I'm passionate about that, and it really kind of regrounds me in terms of kind of who I am in the world. It's just about people being with people and people supporting other people. And that's a really important part of how I recharge. And then, I'm not above the guilty pleasure from time to time where I think of them as brain candy books. It's not something that's teaching me anything, but it's a thriller or a detective story or science fiction or something like that. And that's my guilty pleasure, is a book in a couple of hours where I could be and maybe should be doing something else, but I'm just hanging out reading and getting lost in the story. And I really enjoy that.
Can you give us a glimpse of what's next in your career?
There's a lot of opportunity here at Westminster-Canterbury. I think looking over the next few years, obviously the Bay Tower and Hospice House and some of the new construction stuff that's going on will be happening. But I also think that there's just a ton of opportunity for us to integrate the solutions that we have. So here at Westminster-Canterbury, we have a lot of different software applications that help different business teams do what they do on a daily basis. And sometimes those systems talk to each other, and sometimes those systems need a person in the middle of them. That's really not efficient. But from an innovation perspective, us figuring out our business process workflows and how we eliminate some of that manual work, I see us spending time on that in the coming years. Integration with external partners. How do we get data from external partners, vendors, those kinds of things. How do we get data back out to those people in a streamlined, secure, and efficient way? Getting these systems talking to each other, I think, is a big part of some of the work that we're going to do over the technology-wise over the coming years. And then kind of got this idea, and it's not really even a technology thing, but particularly with AI and some of what's going on, I love the idea of connecting generations. And so this isn't really necessarily a technology thing, although it might be with some sort of an internship program or something like that. But I would love to find a way with some of the local universities or even high schools to bring some sort of technology collaboration from those younger folks to our residents who have a little more life experience, and everybody learns and everybody wins.
Workplace innovation is an ongoing process that requires a combination of technology, cultural, and leadership to be successful. Ed, what can you share regarding the ongoing process of technology in closing?
A few thoughts. So the first one is curiosity. It takes us so far, and whether it's curiosity about technology or whether it's curiosity about how we do our job on a daily basis, or whether it's curiosity about how other people do the same job in a different place. Being curious, I learned that from a previous boss and mentor, and he really kind of helped me think about and focus on the idea or curiosity as a skill to practice and to exercise in the workplace, because it'll take us a lot of places. If we're not curious about how do we do something better, we're never going to innovate. If we're not curious about how somebody else does something that we're also doing, it's just such a fundamental part of the process of innovation is to be curious about, can this be better? How can it be better? How are other people doing it? So thinking about and focusing on curiosity as something to really practice in our daily life. The other piece of it is, especially when it comes to innovation, is not limiting ourselves. It's really easy to be curious about something and to have a really great idea, and then to kind of cut our own idea off. Or I don't know how I would do it. I have this great idea, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know if it's possible. And so we just kind of set it aside or stick it in a drawer or whatever, and we never go anywhere with it. And that brings us back to the idea of collaboration. So not limiting ourselves just because we don't know how something would work or if something would work. So keeping ourselves open to the ideas, to the possibilities, I think is really important. And then the last thing that I would say about it is, it's really easy in our day-to-day grind with all the stuff that we've got going, and we're busy and we get emails and phone calls and, jobs to do, that sometimes we maybe don't make the time to be curious and to be thoughtful and to imagine. We talked about aspiration earlier, and imagination is a big part of that. And it's really easy to not have time for that in a day. And maybe it's not every day, but I think being conscious about creating space to imagine, how could my job be different? And it's not limited to our job, that's your life, whatever, but how could things be different? Be curious about it. Don't limit yourself, and find a way to create some space in your day to give yourself some mental breathing room to make that a priority and to imagine what could be. I think that's really important.
Thank you, Ed, for sharing these concepts and the insight and the wisdom that our listening audience will definitely profit from all that you have said. I want to thank you for your time that you shared with us in this leadership.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a treat. I appreciate it, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Westminster-Canterbury Tales podcast. Thank you for listening.